the next topic is, of course, moral inflexibility as a trans person in cis-normative society. This is a fun fucking topic. I should probably just take a timestamp. 1 hour, 3 minutes in. Okay. Um, so three. Right. So yes. Anyway, this topic. This is something that popped up last year. It came in response to the publishing of an article titled Right Temporoparietal Junction Underlying Avoidance of Moral Transgression in Autism Spectrum Disorder, which was in the Journal of Neuroscience, again, 2020. And the response to this in the autistic community was quite vocal, and I will hopefully show you why by just quoting a few sections. First quote is, quote, Autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is characterized by a core deficit in theory of mind, DOM, ability, which extends to perturbations in moral judgment and decision making. Although the function of the right temporoparietal junction, RTPJ, a key neural marker of TOM and morality, is known to be altered in autistic individuals. The for fuck's sake.
Neurocomputational mechanisms underlying its specific impairment in moral decision-making remain unclear.
End quote. Do you just want to take the next quote? I'm sorry.
Sure. That's fine. I get to finally say stuff.
Okay. So, quote.
I'm judging you. Quote, ASD patients and healthy controls, HC, decided in public or private whether to incur a personal cost for funding a morally good cause, good context, or receive a personal gain for benefiting from a morally bad cause, bad context. Compared with HC, individuals with ASD were much more likely to reject the opportunity to earn ill-gotten money by supporting a bad cause than HC. Computational modeling revealed that this resulted from unduly weighing benefits for themselves and the bad cause, suggesting that ASD patients apply a rule of refusing to serve a bad cause because they over-evaluate the negative consequences of their actions.
End quote.
I really need to drink some water, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Hopefully the sound on that isn't too bad. It's probably going to be full of clicking noises.
Yeah, fine. It was good. Last quote.
Quote, together these findings indicate the contribution of RTPJ in representing information concerning moral rules and provide new insights for the neurobiological basis underpinning moral behaviors illustrated by a specific dysfunction of RTPJ in ASD patients, end quote.
So, in basic colloquial speech, I was going to say colonial speech there for a second. Like, no. Okay.
Let's be honest, that also.
Well, that was, but in basic colloquial speech, autistic people, less likely to do morally bad thing. That is morally bad. That is the argument here. So when offered an opportunity to earn money by doing a bad thing or to lose money by doing a good thing, the majority of autistic people overwhelmingly did the good thing compared to a healthy control, which, by the way, is just putting the hand on the scale of neurodivergent people by just saying, yeah, we are the healthy control.
This is what I was talking about before with neurotypical and holistic supremacy.
Yes. Everything autistic people do must be bad because they're autistic. That's the way they see the world. And again, seeing this, going back to my time in the secular community, one of the big arguments between atheists and apologists is over who is more moral. It's one of those debates that always comes up. And we always go into deep detail about how the facts that both of them actually donate about the same amount of money to charity, which is one of the ways we sort of weigh morality. But when it comes to religious people, they choose to focus on religious charity, which can very often be seen as sort of self-aggrandizing because it like, oh yes, I'm helping like the faith convert souls, etc., and it's kind of a tangle of a mess, and like, is that really good, or is that, you know, all this, and like, is it really charity? Because very often, like, the charity organizations they donate to are like the Salvation Army, and they hold sandwich at ransom. Yeah, you can come, you can eat, etc., but only if you listen to us preach, sort of thing. So like the secular and the theist community fight over this constantly. They fight over which of us is more moral, which of us is more likely to, you know, sacrifice stuff, etc. And then like the neurotypical researchers come in, and then they come along and like, oh yeah, this is bad. If you do the right thing, that's bad. You're overthinking the consequences of your actions. Um, it's like it's also interesting because I just realized, in a similar vein to what we actually talked about in private the other day, theory of mind. One of the theory of mind thing is being able to step out and think about how others think. Which, if you're thinking about the consequences of your actions, is something you're probably doing. But again, it seems to be defining theory of mind in a way that, yeah.
Actually, do you mind if I plug something that doesn't quite
Sure.
exist
Go ahead.
yet? Okay. So I was actually thinking about autism and theory of mind the other day because I was thinking about some stuff that I need to criticize at some point, and stuff I've criticized in the past. And one of the things, if you've seen my content, you may have noticed one of the things I do a lot when I criticize people is I consider what information they had at the time and what information it's reasonable to expect them to have if they had done their due diligence, if I feel like they haven't done their due diligence. A major thing, if you look at my bearing, don't look at my bearing videos, they're really bad. They're like the first videos I did, and they're terrible. But if you do look at them, something I'm very clear on is the dates of the articles I reference and whether or not they were before the video I'm criticizing or not.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this demonstrates a very strong theory of mind, I think. The ability to know whether or not this person had certain information. And so this idea that autistic people don't have theory of mind is an absolute joke.
Yeah, one of the things we can have problems with is the input in certain situations, and that's reading subtle social cues. But that doesn't define the ability to then like think in abstract.
I was getting to that. Yeah, I did some digging. I was thinking of tweeting about it just to get it off my chest, and I just did some digging quickly to see where the whole autistics have no theory of mind thing is at. And I managed to find this study where they said that, you know, the theory of mind tests, older autistic children are passing these tests. So clearly, this doesn't mean that old autistic children are demonstrating a theory of mind. What it means is that the tests are too simple. They're really only suitable for testing younger kids. We need to find some new tests for older kids. Yeah. And one of the tests that they decided on was the see the mind in the eyes test, which is where they show a bunch of autistic and also holistic kids pictures of people's eyes, just their eyes, and say you have to identify the emotions. And that has nothing to do with your ability to. I mean, it's like there's a very technically has something to do with it, but it, you know, not being able to do that doesn't mean you can't attribute mental states to other people and understand that other people have different information than you. It just means you can recognize faces and read emotions on faces, which is something autistic kids notoriously suck at. Yeah. So it's these researchers are very clearly, again, putting their finger on the scale, picking something which kind of has something to do with theory of mind, but that autistic kids are going to fail regardless of whether or not they have a theory of mind. In fairness to that research paper, they did have another test, which is, I think, still flawed, but in a more subtle way. But, you know, the fact that they would do that, or use recognizing faces as a test, shows that they're really biased and going about things very unethically. And the reason why I asked if I could plug something that doesn't exist yet is because I'm actually thinking of doing a video exploring that, and I might actually do this one this time. So we'll have to see.
So if you want to go follow, a link to Levi's account is down below, so you can do that. We've had some people mention that like they've had this sort of experience themselves. So, for example, Donna states that, quote, "Cool, that's exactly what I kept facing and a computer, I guess that's as a computer programmer. People kept telling me I was being selfish or refusing to work on projects that I found mildly destructive, like weapons," end quote. Yeah, that's quite a
Amazing.
common thing. Yeah, Seth, like, that's the thing. That autism covers, like, the best way to explain autism is the audio dials. It's like there's multiple like audio dials which are like turned up or down or whatever. And it's like different autistic people have such different experiences in what they do, and there's also so much like misinformation and crap out there, which states that like, an autistic person has to have this trait. And it's like, no, they don't. They do not.
Another thing I noticed is that a lot of studies, not all of them, there were some studies on adults, but a lot of them are also on older children. And so the thing is, like, you might struggle a lot with reading emotions when you're younger, but you might get better at it as you get older. Especially for, like, personally, I find that I like my ability to interpret emotions is probably influenced by going through a lot of emotional abuse, where, you know, if anyone's gone through emotional abuse, or, you know, even physical abuse, you'll know that it's very important to be able to tell when people are upset and to know how to respond and what they want and stuff. And so, you know, if you go through those experiences, autistic or not, you're going to develop those skills.
Yeah, and that's something like I've looked into before in relation to like Dungeons and Dragons, because I've been noticing that there's been a few people who have been using Dungeons and Dragons to help autistic people that struggle in certain areas develop certain skills, communication, team building, you know, all those sorts of things. So like it is something that you can practice, and like if certain people are struggling with certain things, then yeah, they should be helped out. The problem is when a bunch of, you know, neurotypicals come along,
Tosses in white coats.
yeah, saucers and white coats, and start saying like, you have to look at people in the eye, or like, you know, stuff like this, and they just start like the most absurd things. Like, why does my stimming, how does that hurt anyone? Why are we focusing on my stimming? You know, there are other things you could help me with.
Something else I was thinking about actually was the therapy I went through. That's another one of the downsides of being diagnosed young, is you're often put through abusive therapies. And I don't really remember what I was put through, but I do know that I was forced to do a lot of arbitrary tasks for no particular reason. And like a lot of the trauma I have that I don't understand makes a lot of sense when viewed through that lens. You know, why are you making a kid play pretend when they're not comfortable with it?
Yeah.
Why are you, you know, forcing me to stay in the bathroom because I'm refusing to stack blocks or whatever I don't know. Yeah, that's the problem. Is there are ways you can help people develop these sorts of skills that they need.
Yeah.
Very easily, but then, you know, these fucking neurotypical pieces of shit are so focused on making autistic people look neurotypical and conform that they're just putting us through hell for no reason.
While still refusing to see you as, obviously, us as fully fledged people.
Yeah.
That's the thing as well, because again, it always goes back to, yes, well, they're really all children, and they need to be, you know, handled and everything like this, and they can't have any autonomy, and let's just gaslight them and tell them how they feel about things as core to their being as their gender. Yeah, it's like with the D&D thing, I like it because it's like presented as just play. It's just learning through play. If you're forcing anyone to stay at a D&D table, that's not how you play. But like hopefully like there are people out there that this sort of thing can help, you know. It doesn't have to be in a clinical sort of, you know, if you don't do this thing, I'm gonna punish you. Don't approach kids like that. That's just horrific. But yes, anyway, the point. So anyway,
Point.
this
It was
came
there
out.
somewhere until I
This
lost
came
it.
out in 2020, and like the autistic community just slammed it on Twitter. It was a drag. It was a drag. Like, literally, all the autistic, like the large autistic profiles, like just dragging. Like, oh my god, I can't believe like they've equated like doing the morally right thing as a bad thing. It's just like there's absolutely no way to win with neurotypical people, because anytime you do anything better than them, suddenly they'll define it as bad. Of course, another way to look at this, in the fact that we are in a capitalist society, it was specifically financial gain and the moral flexibility of your actions in that financial gain. So it's like, actually, it does make sense in a capitalist lens to view this as a bad thing, you know? Oh, you're not willing to sell out and help, you know, the military-industrial complex, as, Donna mentioned? Like, oh, well, that's bad. You need to be more morally flexible. But speaking of moral flexibility, it kind of reminds me of the behavior of certain figures when it comes to the acceptance of trans people. And how very often people are quite happy to sound the trumpet of trans acceptance and trans support, until there's an actual cost involved, until they might lose out on something. Again, I've been looking back at a lot of stuff throughout my life now that I know I'm autistic, and considering like this stuff that I beat myself up over, or just seems strange. Like, is there an explanation for this? Looking back at what happened in 2019, and how person after person after person capitulated to rationality rules and just threw the trans community under the bus. Shannon Q, Jimmy Snow, Surus, all these people. It's just, again, I can't help but wonder if this sort of has anything to do with it. People came to me in 2019. They told me that this video was turning up in certain circles. It was going to be damaging. I'd actually looked into one of Woodford's videos before, which I totally forgot about, the Ben Shapiro one, until someone else went back and reminded me that it existed. And like I looked into it and I saw this is horrific. Like, this is going to do real damage. And we've seen recently it has done real damage. Those videos reached out to hundreds of thousands of people. It's just, and it's partly responsible for the state we're in. But because I stood up and I spoke out about it, it's interesting to see how everyone else reacted to that. My moral inflexibility in standing up against transphobia was seen as a problem with me, not an issue with the transphobia I was facing. It's really interesting as well, because like when I first made the Woodford video, the very first one, I actually I gave him an out. I made Stephen Woodford's gone ahead and he's made like a recent video about the Richard Dawkins things we talk about later, but he opens his video like, oh, you can call me alt-light, etc. It's like, that was a joke in my original one, and I even then stated prove me wrong on it at like the end of my video. And I was trying to be flexible. I was trying to be accommodating, but when he just showed that he was just fucking us around a month later, it was really interesting to see how I became the bad person, because I wasn't willing to sell out on my values as a humanist, as a trans person, as someone who tries to do the right thing, And it reminds me of like the whole notion of these peacekeepers. People who go around trying to pretend like, abusers and abuse victims should just get on with each other, And it's like, as long as we have this idea, we're never going to get anywhere with anything. It's just, yeah, it feeds into the greater abuse culture, which is possibly why autistic people are seen as such a threat to it, because we have a culture, we have a rape culture, we have an abuse culture that teaches people in power that they can exploit, they can harm others, and they can get away with it, and there's nothing you can do about it. Suddenly you have this population of autistic people who's like, nah, we're not gonna let you. We're gonna call you out no matter what it does to us. We are gonna keep going at you. I get the sense that that's part of the reason, along with like the whole capitalist thing, why there's such a desperation to like demonize this moral inflexibility. I don't know if you have anything to add, but
I don't think so. No.
okay. Which I believe means
Might be worth reading some of the chat though. Yeah, I noticed Tweefel says, my suspicion is that holistic people tend to pick up things like reading emotion intuitively without having to think about it, whereas autistic people have to consciously learn and think about it, which makes it more hard work, but we can do it and potentially do it better because it's a conscious process. And yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell, although trying to learn to pick up on emotion really well as a conscious process, I found that can be very hit and miss because it can be really subtle.
Yeah.
I think that's the sort of thing where if you want to learn how to do it well as a conscious process, you have to do a ridiculous amount of practice. Because over the years, I've done a lot of that, of reading about things like body language and facial expressions. And honestly, that has done nothing compared to just being in situations where I have to read emotions over and over and over again. So it's complicated, but yeah, generally I'd say yes, holistic people do intuitively. Autistic people generally have to kind of learn it consciously, intentionally.